Hello everybody, I am open to week 2 of our class in Plato, and this is the first week we'll be getting into some real content. Although last week we had a kind of brief discussion posting just to kind of get to know everybody and for me to kind of check in with you. This is the first week that we'll be covering content in the class. So listening to this podcast is a must. Every week I'll have a podcast overview for the week, which goes over things to note, things you'll be working on. I often will tell you if there's any changes to the syllabus, due dates, or assignments. I might also give you information about extra credit. So listening to the podcast is a must, and they're quick. They're no longer than 15 minutes. So once you've listened to the podcast, the next thing that you're going to do is check out the objectives for the week. Now we'll be covering chapter 1 this week, which is stress and health. It's a basic overview of how stress affects health and vice versa. And so what I've done is, and what I'll do each week is give you a podcast. You can click right here that explains all of these concepts. These are the concepts you will be covering in the reading. And you're not doing anything with this. You're not turning these in or answering these except for maybe your own purposes. So a lot of students use these objectives as a study guide to help study for the test. But it's nice to look at these before you dive into reading because that way you can get acquainted with what the chapter is going to cover before you dive in. So definitely take a listen to the podcast here and work your way through these objectives. Once you've done that, you'll be ready to take a look at the lecture slides. And these are great to have open next to you or printed next to you as you're reading through the chapter. That way you can kind of bridge lecture material with chapter material. The lectures always map onto the chapters. There's never any extra stuff in the lectures that aren't covered in the chapters. The lecture slides are really meant to help illustrate even more so points made in the reading. So hopefully that doing them in that order will help you. If you don't yet have your book, I've included a PDF of the preface and chapter 1, which I want you to read this week. And you're going to want to be prepared to have your book by next week, which is week 3, if you don't have it already. But this gives you a little bit of a head start. Once you've read the Harrington chapter, you're then ready to watch some of the videos I've posted for you this week. I've posted just some quick ones. They're not long at all. This one's on how stress affects your overall health, some good points, the physical effects of stress. This one from Khan Academy goes over some of your different physiological systems and how stress affects them. And this is awesome because we're going to be talking about these all throughout the semester. And then this last video actually goes along nicely with the book that you're going to be reading. This is the author of the book, How to Make Stress Your Friend. The name of the book is The Upside of Stress that you'll be reading in the class. The name of the TED Talk that Kelly McGonigal, the author of the book, did is called How to Make Stress Your Friend. So I figured it would be a good week to watch this TED Talk. It's about 20 minutes long, where she discusses her research on stress and some of the interesting things she found out, which led to her publication of the book, The Upside of Stress. She just has a different way of viewing stress, and she teaches a different mindset when it comes to stress. So this week you're going to get acquainted with her and some of her research by watching this TED Talk, and then readings on the book will start in a couple weeks. So we'll dive into that in a couple weeks once we kind of have our foothold a little bit on the field of stress and health. So that wraps up the videos for this week. The next thing you're going to do, you'll be ready for your discussion board posting. So after you've read everything and you've watched the videos, you'll then dive into your discussion for this week. I've posted the rubric for how to do a discussion board post. It gives you the layout of what your post should include. The posts are worth 25 points, 10 points for your original post and 5 points per response to others. And so the rubric will outline what those should have in them and what they should look like. So this is a good thing to download and keep near you as you are working through the material. So you want to make sure that as you're working through your posts, that you're always incorporating in the material that you've read for the week. So if it's the McGonagall book and the chapter, you want to be referencing both of those. If it's just the chapter, then you're going to reference those. And by doing this, you're showing me that you have a good understanding of the material. Now, in order to do that and to support your statements with what you're reading, you need to be citing properly. So I've included just a one-page document on how to cite your sources in APA format. And this should be done anytime you are supporting your statements with things you've read from the readings. And this should be done in your discussion posts, just like it would be in a paper that you would do for class. So that will help you and guide you with this week's discussion. And here are your questions. So what you're going to do is you're first going to answer these questions. That's going to be due by Friday every week. Your original response to these questions is due Friday. And then you want to make sure everyone gets their posts in by Friday before anyone starts responding to other people. So then I give you Saturday and Sunday to make your responses. And I do this on purpose because I want to make sure that everyone has a chance to post their answers to these questions before people start jumping in and responding. Otherwise, the people who post first tend to get all the responses, and then we get left with some students who no one responds to their posts. And I don't want that to happen. So your original responses are due Friday, and then you're to respond to 3 other people by Sunday. And that's the same every week. So you're going to work your way through these questions, again, citing and supporting from the readings that you've done. Sometimes you're going to be completing insight exercises that are in your book. And these are meant to really help zone in on specific material that I want you to grasp. Some of them might be questionnaires or surveys that ask you about yourself. So it's kind of cool because this class is interactive in a sense that, I want you to come away from the class having a good sense of how to handle your stress, how to deal with it better, how to employ strategies that put you in control instead of your stress in control. I hope that this will be meaningful for you as you work through these types of exercises. So this week you're going to be answering the questions here. You're completing first the short form version of Antonovsky's Orientation to Life questionnaire. And this questionnaire measures what he calls a sense of coherence. Sense of coherence can involve the comprehensibility, the manageability, and the meaningfulness of a stressful experience. Because all these 3 elements, he would say, go into how someone responds to stress. So you're going to complete the survey, the questionnaire, and you're going to score yourself, and it explains how to do that on there. And then you're going to talk about how do you think each of these factors, these 3 things, influence your ability to cope with stress. Like, why are these 3 things important in how we cope with stress? How do you believe they influence your health? And you want to use examples from the readings to support your answers. Then you're going to think of a time when you experienced eustress. That's the good stress we have in our lives, stress that centers around good things, but nonetheless stressful, like a wedding or maybe like graduation. And another time when you encountered an uplift. An uplift can be just something good that happens to you, in your day to day. How are they similar and how are they different from each other? And which type of experience do you prefer and why? And then lastly, based off of the reading, what are some generalized resistance resources that you believe help you resist entropy? So in the chapter, the author talks about entropy being kind of this state where we don't deal very well with stress. But to prevent that, we typically develop for ourselves some different resources that we are kind of like our go-tos that help us combat stress. So you're going to talk about what some of those are that you have. And so you're going to want to refer to the book to make sure you understand what these are. Can you think of any that have moved you toward the salutary end of Antonovsky's continuum? So you'll want to look and see what is that salutary end, and what are they, and how do you think that they're able to produce their salutary effects? So you definitely want to read through that material, take some good notes as you're reading so that you can have an idea maybe of what you want to say in your post as you go. And I would always recommend to preview the discussion questions before you read, so that way you can kind of zone in and know what you should tune to in the reading, what you're going to be asked about, and you can take note of that as you're doing the readings. Okay, so that wraps up week 2. I just would like to remind everybody that I am available via email. The class is asynchronous, so you're not required to be online at any specific time to meet in the class. This class is meant for you to work through it at your own pace week to week. Granted, there's due dates, but you can kind of, do it when works for you. And I've found that this has been super helpful for a lot of students. While I do miss the class environment and having class, Zoom classes are just not the same. And I've not typically had great experiences with them, and a lot of my students haven't. Some do like it and get a lot out of it. But what I think works even better is to give you all the material, heavy on the reading. You guys are college students, you can handle that. Heavy on the reading, posting the lectures, giving some videos, giving specific direction on what I'm requiring of you. And then if you have questions, you can Zoom with me one-on-one. And I found that to be really helpful. I've gotten a lot out of my Zoom meetings with students one-on-one, because there you can ask questions that you might not want to ask in front of a class or on a Zoom class, because it's just you and me. So if you're working through the material and you have questions, like you get stuck on, one of these concepts in the reading, feel free to reach out to me. If it's just a quick question, you can email me. You can use the discussion board student lounge to ask other people questions, or ask Dr. W in their discussion board if you have a question for me that pertains to the material. Or if you'd like to Zoom, just email me and let me know. That way I can make sure to be available for you, and I'll set up a Zoom time that is just for you and me. And I can do that pretty easily as long as you let me know ahead of time. So keep that in mind as you're working through the material, that I'm available to you for that. And good luck with your first full week of content.